Hello. Hi, good afternoon. Sorry,
Good.
y'all. I apologize for being a couple minutes late. My name is Rachel Leidy, and I'm going to be leading today's training session. I am the Director of Compliance Education here at FutureFeed. Looks like we have a decent turnout today. We have 14 people on the call. Can I get confirmation that you can hear me? It looks like some folks are not able to hear me. Okay. All right. Most can hear me. It might be on your end. All right. I'm going to start sharing my screen here in a second. I just want to let you all know that this session is being recorded. And that's for your, so that way if I'm going to cover a lot today in this 1 hour training session. And if you need to revisit the training, that we did today, you can. So about an hour after I end the call, you'll get a link to that recording. It takes an hour, hour and a half to process. And just note that this is an open session, so there are multiple FutureFeed users on today's call, multiple organizations. So please just, all be aware and respectful. Feel free to interrupt me along the way. I will not take any offense. I do have a lot to cover, so I tend to just roll on. So feel free to interrupt me or raise your hand, or even if you're not able to speak, go ahead, use the chat room function, and I'll look in there for questions every once in a while. Okay. And to save bandwidth, I'm gonna kill my camera and then start sharing. Okay. And let me just clean up my screen a little bit here. All right. So can I get confirmation from someone that you're able to see my screen? I'm logged into FutureFeed. All right. So when I log into FutureFeed, this is what I see. I have access to all of these environments. Each one of these is a separate environment, and each one is going to produce one system security plan, one system POAM. So if you are a company that has multiple compliance boundaries, or you have the need to have, separate environments and separate system security plans, then you would need to purchase a separate environment. So I'm going to use this training subscription environment today. And let me switch to the right framework. We're going to stay with level 2, 801.71 Rev 2. But, so I am a lead CCA. I also have my CCP, my CISSP, and I've been doing DoD compliance framework implementation, consulting and assessing type work for almost 15 years now. So I will not be able to answer any related question, CMMC requirement related questions. I'm happy to answer those type of questions in our Thursday session. So if you log into FutureFeed and you scroll to the bottom of the page, you got two registration links. This first one here, you're going to recognize this page because this is where you went to sign up for this session. So here's where you're going to go to sign up for training session number 2 when you're ready. You can also sign up for this session again if you'd like. You can sit through multiple of these sessions, however many you need. So the second link, though, this is to register and for a weekly Thursday session with me. It's every Thursday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a 30-minute meeting, and it's meant just for open office hours. So as you guys are working in FutureFeed and, working on populating FutureFeed and getting the data into FutureFeed, if you have any questions about FutureFeed, maybe you're stuck on something or you need a little training or some guidance, uh, you have multiple ways to get a hold of myself or someone from the company, you can email support@futurefeed.co and we will respond to you. Or you can just join this weekly Thursday session and ask it there. So you just have to register once, and then once you're registered, it will be on your calendar every week. I just recommend registering it and then it's on your calendar. And then that way, if you do have a question for that week, or maybe, some NIST 800 171 CMMC related question, you could jump into that Thursday session and ask it. It's usually about 30, 40 people there. It's always a good discussion, and we do tend to talk about the requirements a lot. So in today's session, though, I'm just going to cover training you, about the tool and getting started with the tool. That's what this session is for, as well as the next session. There's 2 sessions you got to sit through. And so what we've done is we do have a recommended approach to using FutureFeed or populating FutureFeed. And so I'm going to teach you that recommended approach. However, you can take what you learned today and approach FutureFeed however you want to. Maybe you want to jump straight to this assess page over here and start documenting your assessment results. Maybe because maybe you already have a gap assessment, so you're just going to be copying and pasting data in. There's no, there's no wrong way of filling out the data. But today, how I'm going to cover the training is today I'm going to cover this dashboard area. I'm going to go over the dashboard area. And then I'm going to start here. So this is where we recommend starting when you just get access to FutureFeed and you're building out your FutureFeed environment. We recommend starting here. That's why we named it Start. So after you fill out all this company data and system data in this Start field here, then we recommend going onto the People section. And in People, this is where you are defining the users, the roles, and the teams that are involved with compliance management or implementing compliance in your environment. So if all throughout FutureFeed, right? So let me show you something here quick. Let me go to a requirement. So if I go to this requirement here, 311, under every requirement, we have this interview section. This is where you identify the people responsible for this requirement, this one requirement, 311, people accountable, anybody who needs to be consulted or informed. All throughout FutureFeed, we're using this RACI model, RACI, RACI model. It's a very robust model for identifying, personnel involved with the requirements and to, what is their level of involvement. And so all throughout FutureFeed, we use this RACI model in several places. You see it here in the assess under all of the requirements. You're going to see it here under documents. Under each document, you identify RACI responsibility, and you'll see it here under tools in the POEM area. And so in FutureFeed, when you start filling out FutureFeed and you want to identify an individual, a role, or a team as responsible, accountable, consulted, or informed in FutureFeed, you're going to have to first define that in FutureFeed. So that way you can go select those individuals by name or role or team name. All right, so that's what you're doing in the people section, is you're building out, first your access to your FutureFeed environment and then defining all those other roles, users, and teams involved. So that way, as you start filling out the rest of FutureFeed, you can really clearly identify that responsibility. Then after people, we recommend going on to tools. And in tools, there's a lot of data that gets captured here. But just to get started, we really recommend 3 things. The first thing is logging all of your tools and services. So here I'm in tools, and you see we have a couple subcategories. We have tools and services. Here's specific assets, and here's a place to log vendors. So we recommend going in here under tools and logging all your technology. And to log technology, you're just going to hit the plus button, identify that piece of technology or that service or that vendor, and then hit the plus button, log. What happens then is you create one of these entries here. You'll create a technology inventory item. And these are, you could think of these as all folders. So here's a Tenable Nessus vulnerability scanner tool entry. If I click on it, think of this as like a folder system. So now in here, there's a bunch of metadata I can capture, all related to this one tool. Responsibility for the tool, ownership of the tool, what the tool, how the tool is helping you meet the requirements, identifying those requirements, and then even creating tasks and housing evidence in here related to this tool. So there's a lot you could do in each item. Each item is going to have these 5 sections here under the tools. And so we recommend going to tools, logging your technology, and then opening up that entry and identifying responsibility and accountability. At least try to get the R and the A. And then go over to the connect and start connecting the item. In this case, it's a firewall entry to the requirements. Why am I identifying a firewall as an asset in my environment? Well, the firewall is helping me implement several of the NIST 800-171 requirements. And then additionally, my firewall has to itself meet the 800-171 technical requirements, for the administrative login interface and making sure that the firewall itself is, access controlled and managed. And so here is where we're going to start tagging all of the requirements. And so I would I would start by looking for keywords or the IDs if you know them, but maybe there's one that mentions firewall. You could see here I already have a lot selected, so I'm going to go ahead and remove those. And then we could search by, let's see, list. A firewall does kind of help with access control lists and rule sets. But also you can, let's say, connection. It would maybe a good word. Just think of words with firewall, connection control. So here's a requirement that talks about controlling and monitoring external connections. I'm going to do that with my firewall. Maybe connection termination at the VPN and controlling remote access. I'm just selecting here for example purposes, but that's what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and start connecting the requirements to the item. Okay. So let me kind of back up. Add people, users, roles, teams, go to tools, add your tools, and at the very least, capture responsibility and accountability and connect the requirements. That's just to get started. Work on filling out the rest of the data a little bit later, but just to get started and get things in FutureFeed and get yourself set up to start really using FutureFeed to manage your compliance projects and efforts. So then after you do tools and you assign responsibility and you connect the requirements, then we recommend going to documents and doing the exact same thing. So logging your documents, your security documents. Think of the 800-171 requirements and think of the documents that tend to be involved. So access control policy, all your policies and procedures, processes, checklists, forms, all that documentation that ends up getting produced, or maybe you already have it produced. How's that here? So just hit the plus button, what is it? Title it. And then you've made a document entry. So again, same thing, just open it up. Now you have this folder structure. We recommend getting the R assigned and the A assigned and going to the connect and start connecting it to the requirements. Don't worry about this leader follower stuff right now. We are going to cover that more in depth in my training, but just at a high level, I'm telling you what, our recommended approach, giving you that big picture. So my access control policy, I would, of course, start looking for those requirements where I've, defined some policy surrounding access control, and I would connect those. So now, after you log your tools and your documents and you connect it to the controls and you assign some responsibility, when you get to the assess area, what you've done is you've set yourself up with the ability to almost conduct another mini or internal gap assessment. Even if you're going to be taking the results of maybe a gap assessment that you went through 6 months ago, a year ago, as you're copying in those results here, you might want to do some internal evaluation and just kind of get a better, more current analysis of your level of compliance. And if you would have filled it out like we said, you should be ready to do that. So in the assess area, what you'll do is you'll start going through the controls and evaluating if they're implemented or not, or copying and pasting other results if you have it. Sorry, hold on. I got things popping up on my screen. So in the assess areas where you document, how the requirements implemented and then the status of if it is or not implemented. And if you added your tools and your documents and your people, now you could start, tagging people responsible for this requirement and start building out this interview section for the requirement. And go down to the examine section, and you'll see that down here, you're going to have documents connected. Or you could have, maybe you don't, but if you logged a document over here and you connected it to this requirement, then it's going to show up here. So this is some evidence and artifacts. This is your proof. What you want to find down here is all that documentation that is proof that you are implementing this one requirement. And then when you connected the tools, your technology, you're going to find those under tests. This is where you'll find your tools connections. And so you'll see some here if you made the connections, but also maybe you forgot or you missed one. So you can add connections from this interface as well, or you can delete them if you need to. Same thing with the documents. Maybe oh yeah, we do have a document that kind of speaks to this requirement. Go in and find it, log it, connect it. What you're doing is you're building out your body of evidence. You're building out that proof that you're going to need to show to assessors that you are doing and you are implementing these requirements. Okay, so I mean, at the very least, go in here, at a high level, review the requirements, document the status, if it's met or not met. If something's not met, what's going to happen is look at this second check mark here, this one. You see how there's a plus here? In FutureFeed, when you mark something not met, it's going to create that first poem entry for you. See how it did that? Plus, I go over here, my score changed, and there's my poem. So you can go back later and work on, identifying and developing a remediation plan or an implementation plan to get compliant. You don't have to do that right away. You could do it now if you want, but at the very least, if you scroll through the assess and you look at all of the requirements and you read the requirement, you identify if it's met or not met, you should have some evidence attached that you can look at. And then when you're done with the assess and you've looked at all of the controls, you'll have a bit of a better, understanding of where you're at as far as level of compliance, or maybe you're missing some evidence. You have a gap in your evidence, but you are doing something, but you don't have that document. Or maybe you're just not doing something and you have to develop the document and get that process implemented. And so after the assess, then what you'll do is you'll go on to review your system security plan. At this point in time, if you approached filling out FutureFeed like I've talked about, your system security plan should be fairly, populated, because a lot of the company and system information is going to be pulled from this start area here. And then the requirements and hardware is all going to be pulled from tools and the assess, and we got some document evidence. So all of that is being used to build out your SSP. And at this point in time, if you've completed these ones to the best of your ability, your SSP should have some information in it. And you could start reviewing the sections of your SSP and looking at maybe where there's some information missing or where you have some gaps. And then after that, you should be pretty set with having a solid POAM listing, okay? Because in the assess area, if you mark something not met, you created a POAM. In the document area, if you said this access control policy, right now it's in the active area. So this access control policy is active. Well, let's say it's still in draft and I'm still working on this access control policy and we actually don't have one yet. Well, right now it's active. If I mark it pending and I give it a due date, I just created a POAM entry. I just put my access control policy on my system POAM. It has a due date of August 29th because we're still working on drafting or reviewing or editing or approving, enforcing this policy. Same thing with tools. Over under tools, let's say you don't have a vulnerability scanner. Okay, so maybe I put this on pending, and that's my indication on my system POAM that, hey, we're going to plan to acquire Tenable Nessus because we have to do vulnerability scanning. So we're planning to acquire this technology, and I put it on my POAM so I could track that acquisition and configuration and deployment to production. Or, maybe it's active, but in your technology over here, you see I can create a POAM over here. So maybe I just want to create a POAM because I'm not sure if my vulnerability scanner is set up correctly. So review vuln scanner baseline configuration to evaluate so I can create POAM entries specific to my technology. So if you have technology that needs to be configured for a baseline, you can put that on your POAM, or, other things like this is a vulnerability scanner. So maybe I just need them to update my target scan asset listing in the vuln scanner to align with my uh, 800.171 compliance boundary. Maybe you're still working on defining your boundary. Well, everything that is in your boundary, eventually you need to be vulnerability scanning it because there's a requirement that says vulnerability scan assets on a defined frequency. And so making sure your asset listing, your target asset scan listing is aligned with that compliance boundary listing. You should do that before marking something fully compliant or moving into an assessment. But anyway, my point is you can make POAMs within technology. So let me add that one. Now I got 2 POAMs open associated with this vulnerability scanner item. Anyway, so all throughout FutureFeed, you can make POAM items for tools, documents, the objectives, and then as you were working through, you would have done some of that. And over here under your system POAM, you can now see a listing of the things that initially you've determined as not compliant. And you're going to start working on your POAM items now. You're going to start building out different projects and engaging the right people and getting the work done and getting compliant. Okay. Then under deliverables, you can run reports, generate presentations. You can run POAM reports, SSP reports. You can run a report on your assess area as far as level of compliance. Okay, so that's our recommended approach to, starting to use FutureFeed. You will have to, of course, get that information in there because it's just a shell of a tool. It's a blank application. Your company's information needs to get in there. Your compliance boundary needs to get in there. So you could start utilizing it to its full capability. Now, after you've done if you approach what I just said, if you do it the way I just said, eventually you'll go back and you're going to start opening up the technology and start working on filling out all this metadata. I mean, if you want to. Some of this is good, some of it you may not decide to ever use, some of it you will just, decide to use. But you'll start working on filling out metadata and then assigning tasks. You can see here examples of tasks. For example, maybe you want a screenshot of your firewall configuration settings. So you can create a task. Hey, give me a screenshot of that. Or maybe they actually need to configure something on the firewall. Create a task for that. Please implement the lockout threshold for administrative management login or something. And so you'll start creating your tasks, but you can work on filling out this metadata and creating tasks after you get kind of the whole big picture, in there and depicted. Wow. That was a lot. I rambled. So let me now start this session's training, which we did cover a lot of it. So now I'm going to go back through. I'm going to go over this dashboard area quick. I'm going to go over the start area, just highlighting, some of the more difficult sections to like understand or do things in. I'll go over people, tools, and documents, and I'm going to stop there. And then in the next session, I won't have to spend the first 30 minutes going over this whole spiel of, here's how we recommend approaching the tool. We're just going to start by reviewing the assess page. I'll talk about how you do internal assessments, how I would recommend doing them, how to document them in FutureFeed, SSP management, POAM, and deliverables. Okay. All right. So under dashboards here, when you first log into FutureFeed, if you only have access to one package, this is where you're going to end up. Pretty self-explanatory here. The first page is just a nice semi, interactive chart here where you can view and navigate compliance. Then you have this assessment prep center. So this is a kind of new addition to us. And what we've done here is, like I said, all throughout FutureFeed, you put data. And then all that data is used to build out your system security plan and build out your system POAM. And before you go into an assessment, especially an external assessment with a C3PAO, we recommend that you review your data in FutureFeed to determine, making sure that data's in there, it's filled out, and it's accurate prior to going into that assessment. So that way, your body of evidence that you generate from FutureFeed, which you do over here under the deliverables export, that body of evidence that you'll export and give to the C3PAO is accurate. And your SSP, you want to make sure that the information in FutureFeed is accurate. So that way your SSP is accurate and your POAM listing entries are accurate. All right. So what this assessment prep center is you can assign the different pages of FutureFeed to someone in your company. These are all different pages of FutureFeed. There's the people area, tools, documents. All right. So, I always like to use this contract manager as the discussion here, but for example, here is a contract manager page where you list out your cage codes or cage code, one or multiple, and you list out the company contracts. And, what is the contract, start, stop date, specifically what clauses are present in that contract that are requiring you to implement 800-171 in CMMC or other stuff. So, you know, someone at your company, typically not the system administrator or IT department or even someone who's managing compliance, is going to know more about the contracts. They're going to have the accurate contract listing and the cage code. They're going to be that person of record. And so you can assign this page to, let me clear it out here in this training environment. But I would assign this page to my contract manager or whoever in my company knows that information. Okay. So I'm going to assign it to Tony. Now, Tony, when she logs into FutureFeed, she'll come to this page because she'll see that it's been assigned to her and she can review it and start changing, updating it, or just review it, make sure it's accurate. And then when she is logged in, she'll mark it reviewed. It's going to capture her name. I clicked it, so it's capturing my name, but she would click it as it reviewed. It's creating that history log. And then if you want someone else to approve it, or you to approve it, or her to approve it, you can mark it approved and sign off initials that information is updated, it's accurate, and it's been approved. Now when this information is being shown in your system security plan, which it's going to be, as it states right here, it will be shown in your SSP, that information in your SSP is accurate because it's accurate here. And so that's what this assessment prep center is. And now if I go back to that contract manager, you can see it's been approved by me on August 5th. And so this is looking at this little compliance review box. Every page has it. You see here I'm in corporate data. Over here, here's contract data. Under tools, maybe I give this page to my IT department because they're going to know of the tools and the services, vendors, licenses. So I'll assign this whole section here to the IT team. But documents, maybe I'm going to give documents to a different team. And so all of these little compliance review boxes, you could view them all and manage them all from this assessment prep center page here. You can change them up here, get each page assigned to someone, and view status, and then even navigate to the page by clicking on the hyperlink. Reset all when you need to. Critical dates is another project planning tool, just outlining those major milestones for C3PAO or CMMC certification. So when do you plan on implementing the requirements, prepping? When do you plan on being done? When do you plan on having that assessment? If you have findings from that assessment, you have 180 days to remediate them if they were POAMable findings. And so you'll want to plan that remediation and that date to get those reevaluated. And then if you earn your certificate, it's good for 3 years. So when do you have to start prepping for that next assessment? In about 2.5 years. So, Michael, go ahead. Do you have a question related to this section here?
Yeah, this information, does this all fall under what you've selected at the top? So you have your NIST 800-171 release to CMMC level 2.
Yes.
Is this, when you put like contract information in, does that only apply to that item in the dropdown, or does it also apply to CMMC level 1?
It would apply to your whole environment.
Okay, that's what I thought.
This is really just going to kind of change, like over here in the assess, you could see the different, like if I go to my 853 set, here's my 853 RMF controls. And I can, but the overall company data and the system, description and name, scope, all of that stays the same. Really toggling between the frameworks comes into play when you're like working within the assess area.
Perfect. Thank you. That's all I needed.
Yep. All right. So lastly, in this dashboard area, you have responsibilities. So when you log into FutureFeed, I would make it a point to, view. You can even set this as your default view. So when you log in, I'm going to set this as my default view. So now when I log in to my environment, it's going to default to listing out and showing me all of my like open responsibilities. So here's all my RACI responsibilities. Here are the different requirements I have some level of responsibility with. It does look like right now, if you notice down here to the gentleman who is speaking, I'm sorry I didn't capture your name, but here's these are RMF 853 control IDs here, AC06. But if I go down to, let's see if I switch to my level 2 environment, there's my level 2. So that filter does come into play, in some aspects, but not everywhere in the interface. Anyway, so here's my RACI response, my requirements, any tools or services or documents that are assigned to me. Here's any tasks I have, and then here's all my poem items that I have assigned to me in my poem projects. Then if you're in the if you're in the position of kind of managing a team, you could view other people's responsibility assignments here. Anybody who has access to your FutureFeed environment, like an account access, is you're gonna they're gonna be shown here, and you can see what they have assigned to them. Up here in the top right hand corner, user settings, you can go in here under my preferences, and you can set up email notification preferences. And so when you do get, see here, new assignment email and due and overdue task email. So there's some email notification capability that you could set up under your preferences. So then you can get that email notification, and which would then prompt you to log into FutureFeed, and then you could look at this dashboard area and click on. You could even like click on the individual items, and it's going to bring you directly to where that area is that you have to do some work. All right, so that's the dashboards area. Start. Okay, let's go through this. You can navigate between the different pages here or click off that menu and, navigate it this way. But company information, pretty self-explanatory here. You're just, defining the company. You have a place to talk to kind of identify your company's approach to handling risk. Um, are you risk adverse, risk accepting, risk tolerant, risk neutral? And where this comes into play is when you start working within your future feed system POAM and you have to remediate certain items. Well, typically, when you prioritize your remediation efforts, you're going to remediate things that have greater risks and um, greater impact. Cost comes into play, level of effort. Even your risk tolerance and your risk approach comes into play. And so, if you want to use that here, that's where you document that here. This is a good time to note that all throughout FutureFeed, we have these little green eyes, we refer to them. You can hover over them and read more about something. We'll add these in the interface. If we get a lot of questions about something, then we're like, okay, we need to elaborate more. Another good place for you to look for information is up here in these getting started guides. So every page has this getting started guide, and it's different. You click on it, the information is going to be different depending on the page you're in. So if I click on this, I'm going to see the corporate data getting started guide. This is like user manual, user guide, FutureFeed user guide stuff. Now, if I go over here to contract and I click on getting started guide, now I'm seeing information about contracts and why we're capturing the cage code and why it's important to have a cage code and, um, that kind of stuff. If I go over under assess, well, that's the only place that doesn't have it. That was a bad call. Sorry. But if I go under documents, I'm under working documents all. So if I click on this is working documents all. But if I go under policies, it's going to show me stuff about, policies and what are policies and what kind of policies should you log into FutureFeed and all that stuff. How do you log? How to use our templates, that kind of stuff. All right, so look there if you get a little lost, look there for answers. Another place to look for answers, go up into the right user settings under Help Center. It will bring you to our knowledge base, and you will have to be logged in. So do create an account. It's free. It's a FutureFeed website, but log in when you get there, because then you'll have access to all of our knowledge base articles and user guides. So here, search here for questions and guidance. We got videos. We got some other stuff. We're working on improving this. And then here for getting started guides, or join that Thursday session with me I'll help you there. Okay, so wow, how do we get started here? I was talking about green dots. I'm so sorry. And I think I was here under company info. I was telling you risk appetite, green dots. You know, company description, pretty self-explanatory here. Size, description. You have a place to track cybersecurity or IT budget and cybersecurity insurance. If you have it, what does it cover? What are the dates? Locations is pretty important. So here's where you're going to start defining the locations that are in scope of your boundary. If you have any locations that are storing, processing, or transmitting FCI or CUI data, then you will log those locations. So just hit new location, fill out the data required, and hit save. Then you're going to create one of those location inventory items. You'll click on that, and you're going to see it's a very familiar layout. Responsibility, connect, all your locations. You're going to want to make sure your physical security requirements are implemented at those. So you could see here, I've connected all of the physical security requirements to this site. Um, and just other stuff. We'll go over some of this other stuff in a little bit here if I don't run out of time. So add your locations and then open up the location, fill out the metadata. At the very least, get some responsibility assigned and get it assigned to the controls. So that way, when you evaluate the requirements, you'll factor in and you'll think about this location asset to evaluate the requirements there. Maintenance and ownership, you're just defining at a high level who maintains and owns software hardware. Talking about what you license, the vendors involved, who manages, contracts, all that stuff. You can get an idea of how I'd write it up under getting started. There's compliance implications. Wherever I tried to provide more guidance on why we're capturing this information and why do we care and why should you care. I put it in this compliance implications section. And so here's some, an example of maybe how I'd write this up if you're interested. Then we have scope over here. So defining system description, system boundary. We already went over the contracts page. Here's where you identify contracts, cage codes. Then this is data inventory. So here's where you're going to identify your FCI assets for if you have FCI in this boundary. Just toggling on and off. Yeah, these are FCI assets. Okay. These assets here that are listed here, yours is going to be blank. You have to go into tools and start logging your technology. And then when you do that, revisit the FCI page and you'll see the listing of your tools and you can identify which ones are FCI assets. CUI assets are a little bit different. The categorization of CUI assets is done in the tools section. I'll show you that in a second. But under this data inventory, you're just identifying the type of CUI data that you're handling in this environment. So just check the box. Settings, you have the ability to enable ticket integration. Just put your support, your ticketing email there. And then you could email out POAM updates and project updates directly from FutureFeed. Well, where you will see this capability is if I go, well, you'll see in a couple places, but I'll show you what it looks like. What you're going to see is this little envelope. This little envelope here is me emailing a update to my ticketing system on this POAM item here. For an access control policy, and I can even, provide status updates if I needed to, type them out and hit send. So you can do updates to your ticketing system that way. Going back, so that's the last setting. Oh, framework, you can disable that FedRAMP warning that pops up. Admin only can do that. And we only recommend doing that if your company doesn't have FedRAMP requirements. So that's the start. After people, here under people, like I said, you're going to start logging users. You have to be an admin to add users. If you're an admin, you're going to click add new user and give people access to your environment. So you got standard access and admin access. That's all we have right now. We do have an assessor role access level as well. So this is for any C3PAO assessors. You'll give them this level of access to your environment, set the default, set an expiration date for when your assessment expires, give them access. Then they will be able to access your FutureFeed environment but they will not have any edit ability, and they only can view your system security plan and your evidence. So go ahead, you could test it out. If you have your system admin create you an account and give it an assessor role, you could play around and see what they will see. But it's going to help. Your assessment will go a lot faster if you give them access to your environment. And then in that environment, they're able to just navigate your system security plan and pull up your evidence by clicking a couple buttons. It's going to speed things up. Go ahead, Michael. Do you have a question?
Yeah, are you planning on adding a view only that's not an assessor? So if we
We
had like
are.
a technician that needed to be able to view things, but we're not ready to let them edit it,
Right.
we need them to be able to see stuff. So that's
Yeah.
coming.
Yes, it is. It is coming. A more robust, a very, very, very more robust discretionary or like based access control method is going to come into play. And here's how we're doing it, just a sneak peek, guys. But you know, everywhere where you see a RACI model is how that access is going to be controlled. So anybody you say is responsible for this item will be able to edit and update this data, or maybe, you know, the accountable will. But the consulted or, you know, informed, these people don't need to edit the data, or they just need to view it. And so we're designing that level of access. And so that plus, you know, if you have someone at your company that's just maybe their only responsibility is to manage system poems, and so maybe when they log in, they only have access to the system poem field. So they are working on that, and it is going to be designed around that RACI model throughout, as well as maybe some other predefined roles. Um, so what is this no access role? What that is me essentially logging someone by name. They don't have access to my FutureFeed environment. They can't log in, but I need to log them by name. I want to log them by name and email. So that way in my RACI model, I can tag that person as responsible, or I can put that person in a team, like all these names that show up here. I had to define these names. I had to add them. Either some of these people have access, some of these people are just no access, but I logged them so I could clearly identify them as a role, or even, you know, a member of a team. Okay. So the admin will create access to your environment, but also they're going to log access, or, you know, log accounts, log users. So someone at your company will want to produce a listing of users, identify of those users, which ones you want to have access to FutureFeed, which ones you don't. And then whoever's your admin will start creating those accounts or logging those individuals. Then under roles, start defining the roles. You can add new role to define your own role. We do have a few default. You can mark them not applicable if you don't want to use them, or use them. But here's where you're defining security roles, and then you go ahead and assign people to those security roles. Okay. Here is also where you can configure in the RACI model, RACI, that A stands for accountable, and you can set a default accountable role. That way, everywhere the RACI model is used, the default accountable person can be applied and will be automatically assigned as accountable. You can change it individually here and there, but it's nice to have a default. Then under teams, you just add new team, you know, title the team, give it a description if you want, then go down in here, find the team, and then manage users and add, you know, add people, either people to the roles, or you can add roles to the teams, make team leader, fill out your teams, okay? This populate button, what this is all about is we've built out teams for you. So here is if you go and let's say you have HR. Everybody has HR. So here's an HR team, and you could use it, and it's already associated with these three controls regarding training. Here's an incident response team you could use. That's already associated with these incident response associated requirements. If you have a system admin, most people do, either directly or indirectly. And these 79 requirements here are all very technical and are typically assigned to a system admin, or a system admin is involved with these. So you can create teams, pre-built teams that are already associated with the requirements. And so these teams here, like this legal team, is going to show up as responsible in the RACI model for these two requirements here. Bob, do you have a question? I'm not able to hear you. I'm still not able to hear you. Bob, are you speaking?
So I'm sorry that my
There you
microphone
go.
wasn't
Yeah,
working at all.
yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can.
Apologies for that. Sorry about that. Just briefly, you don't need to change your screen, but talking about the auditor role for a second, the 3PAO, if you're like an internal auditor, is there any place to make any comments or say, okay, this objective passed, this objective passed, this objective is incomplete or
Yeah.
fails or whatever?
Yeah. We'll cover that in the assess area, but I'll show you it real quick. Under the
Okay.
assess, go into a requirement, and we have this discussion chat room here. So it's at this level here, you'll find it, but also if you open up an objective, you'll see it's here too. So let's say privileged functions are defined and I need to have like an internal chat. I can say, hey team, or hey IT director or something, do we define this, and if so, where, and give me the doc, right? So here I can make these internal like comments, questions. I can flag them, this is a question, or maybe it's a idea, or, oh, hey, there's an issue here, flag it. So you can mark them and submit. So now, and anybody who comes to this 317 control, if you, of course, open it up, you're going to see those discussions. But these discussion areas, like this one here and this one here, and I'm pretty sure if you open up over here, you can get there. I don't know. There's like a few different ways, but they all tie in and directly relate to this one up here. You see this one? So if I click on that one, now I see that I have, was it this one I just did? There's a discussion open for 317, and I'm, Rachel's asking for this, and I can respond. And so instead of having to remember, oh, under 317, I made a comment and I have to go there to find it, they all are going to be visible up here. So you can have that internal chat discussion area.
Okay, great. I just thought I heard you say before that the assessor role, in terms of the admin adding a role for their user, only had read-only access, I guess. That's what I was concerned about.
Yeah, just that assessor role, and it's really for C3PAOs, but you could give it to internal assessors. But what they essentially just only have view only to this SSP area, view only. So they're going to be able to, go into your requirements and then navigate all the way
Yeah.
down to, even be able to click on the evidence.
So yeah, that's what I'm getting now in my own system. What role do you recommend then for an internal assessor?
They could use, I would have them do the assessor role. Same.
Assessor. Okay. I'm not familiar with that because I'm not an admin. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. You're welcome. All right. So, and let me just wrap up here because we got a couple minutes, and I really am done. So after you log people, you build your roles, you build your teams, go into tools and documents. And just like I said at the beginning of the meeting, in both of these areas, start logging your tools and your documents by hitting the add. Note in both the tools and the documents section, you have active tools, and then scrolling down, pending tools. So maybe my company doesn't have MFA, but we're planning to get MFA because we have to for the requirements, and we're going to use dual MFA. So I've logged that on my system poem. So do pay attention to those areas. If you add something here, I'm going to be putting it on my poem right away. But if you accidentally make it in the wrong area, don't worry. Just click on the item, and it's associated with this active pending flag up here. So you can make things active, enforced, or when you mark them pending, they're on your POAM. So go ahead and log your different tools, your services. You have online, meaning cloud hosted tools and services, on-prem stuff, any service providers, specific assets like CNC machines, 3D printers, any specially, special assets you want to call out, even your CUI assets you can call out here if you want. You could really use this in multiple ways. You'll kind of get a feel for it when you're starting to log things, and then log your vendors. Documents, you have active documents. Scroll down, you got planned, in development, draft documents. If you log them in the same place, wrong place, don't worry. It's again related to active pending up here. For your documents though, it's a little bit different. So once you log your documents, I did say go ahead, get someone responsible and accountable and connect to the requirements. The last thing I want to comment here about documents is you have the choice of deciding how you want to use FutureFeed. FutureFeed can be used as a document management system in this live document editor. You can build out documents here, develop documents. You could start by using our templates. I'll show you that in a second, how to get to our templates. That's all within the live document editor. Or some people already have policies and procedures drafted and made, and they already have a document management system in place. And so you could just choose to attach the most current version of your document. So this is the audit and accountability policy. I would upload or attach my most recent current approved policy here. Or you can even link to it. So over here under notes, if I click the three dots, there's a link. I can put a link. So if I have that housed on SharePoint or somewhere else and I don't want to put it into FutureFeed, it's not recommended, but you can do that. The reason why I don't recommend it is because then when you export that giant body of evidence you need to send to over an assessor, you're not going to be able to have, those files aren't going to be present. It's just going to be links. But it's your choice how you want to use it, right? Some people are more established, some people are just getting started. If you use this live document editor, I recommend you do, because you can use its full capability here, FutureFeed's full capability. But click on this, and then that's where you get our templates. So here you have editor where I can start typing out from scratch, from blank, or maybe I already have something started. I'm going to copy and paste it over from a Word document. Captures history, so every time I hit this publish button, there's going to be a version history. There's my version 1. Templates. If I didn't want to start from scratch and I wanted to use one of the templates available to me in FutureFeed, everybody has access to some templates, FutureFeed templates. Go here and you can find a template. What am I on? Audit and accountability. I don't even know if we have an audit template, but there may be one in here that you want to start or use. So just click on I don't know, this was a bad example, but click on the one you want to use. You could view it and then hit use this template to actually use it. So now if you notice in my live document editor, now it's not blank, it's that template. So now I'm going to click edit and I'm going to start filling out this template. So watch me do Rachel Lighty here. Okay. Now let's say it's approved, it's ready to go, and I want someone to sign that. That's when you're going to start using your tasks. So I can create a task for my CISO to review and approve that document. Now it's ready to go. The template's been filled out. I'm happy with it. So give it to my CISO, due date, hit submit. They're going to get a notification that they have a task. When they log into FutureFeed, then they're going to click on that task, and then it will bring them directly to this page where then they can view that current working document. Okay, it looks good, and hit save, complete, log that they've signed it. And now if you notice here, I'm no longer in the task area, which is where we were originally. We're in evidence. So as you mark tasks complete, one, in order for you to mark a task complete, you have to log evidence, as it just showed, it prompted me to log evidence. You can't bypass that. And then once you do, you have a history, a activity log of all those tasks being completed. And also if I click on it, there's my approved version. I can't edit this anymore. This is locked down. It's a PDF. There's my date and timestamp, and I can even download that PDF if I want to. So this task feature for tools and documents, after you get to a point where you've logged all your documents in your tools and you've identified responsibility and connected to the requirements, go back here and start creating tasks. And you're going to set up initial tasks to get things compliant, but then also tasks related to things you have to do throughout the year. So, for example, under my procedure document here, I have a vulnerability scanning procedure document. And here is where I've decided to create a weekly task because every week I have to do my vulnerability scan. So every week, Mina, who's running my vulnerability scans, is going to get notification, hey, it's time to run that scan. And if she needs to, she can visit these procedures by looking at the document here to look at the procedures. But she'll click on the task and she either has to, upload the, vulnerability scan report or evidence that she ran that vulnerability scan, link to it if it's houseware, or even type up a new like a summary report. All right, and that's the end of today's session. I've already gone over the training. I am sorry. I got to jump for another meeting. If you have any questions that I didn't ask today, go ahead and email support@futurefeed.co. Or you can join this session again next week, or join the Thursday session, ask it there. Multiple different ways to get some help here. But that's all for today, and that's the recommended approach. Next session, I'm going to cover assess, SSP, and FutureFeed. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see if there's any other questions in the chat room before I drop. Let's see. If you don't have any questions, feel free to drop. Like I said, once I hit end, it's going to be about an hour and a half, and you'll get a link to this recording. I don't see. The implementation statement in the assess section is coming from you. You have to define and develop those implementation statements in the assess section, and we talk about that in the second training session. All right, thank you all for your time. Have a great afternoon. Bye.